This is going to be awful as well.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Reading Mormon Apologetics So You Don't Have To. I'm Tanner.
And I'm Sam. And this is going to be the worst.
So a lot of people have been tagging us and sending us this article. You've probably seen it already, so sorry that we're a little late on it. The alarming truth behind anti-Mormonism. This is kind of exciting because we like it when people psychoanalyze us.
We do.
For free. It's like a therapy session we don't have to pay for.
We can't afford John DeLynn.
No, we can't.
We're just going to jump into this. I hate this composition though. I'm going to tilt it down a little bit more.
Alright, we're going to just adjust a bit.
That's a bit better, I think.
I'll start us out. Throughout 2016, I wrote several articles in defense of the restored gospel.
Capitalized restored gospel.
They attracted quite a bit of attention from both the LDS and ex-Mormon communities. I received more hate mail than you can imagine. I can imagine a lot of hate mail. Yeah. While also getting to hear from sincere brothers and sisters in both camps. But nothing I've written can hold a candle to what I'm about to share.
Wow. Okay.
We're getting his
best
Magnus
stuff.
Opus. This time I'm not really going to defend the restoration so much as I intend to expose what anti-Mormonism is and what its objectives really are. We're all part of the Illuminati.
We are.
Actually.
Expose the hell out of us.
Sometimes we just need a good dose of clear, hard truth to see why the doubts that sometimes seem so monumental are more illusion than anything else. That's what you tell to someone who you was sexually abused.
Yeah.
It's more illusion than anything else. I know that we're used to reading a lot of fluffy and lighthearted articles, but I'm asking you to buckle your seatbelt and read this post carefully. Buckle seatbelt
Shit,
and
Tan. Oh, I'm
click.
not even ready to I'm about to be exposed.
Oh, he's giving us a little foreshadow. There's an important aha moment in point 4 that you won't experience unless you've carefully read everything that comes before it.
We will carefully read everything.
Alright, you guys ready for point number 4? I can't wait for the aha.
Parentheses, and please don't forget to share this article. It may help more people than you know.
You know, it's sad because he actually probably gets more traffic from ex-Mormon communities than anybody else because most Mormons don't care that much.
I know.
But ex-Mormons are all over everything.
You're welcome is what we're saying. Number 1, point 1. There's only one credible alternative to the restored gospel. Most members have probably never considered what they would do if they lost their testimonies of the restoration. Would they still be Christians? Would they convert to Presbyterianism? Who converts to Presbyterianism? Is this 1830? Or Catholicism? You might expect so, but in reality, ex-Mormons generally can't find a believable Christian alternative to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's simply impossible to leave the restored gospel for another version of Christianity without realizing that you've lost so many of its essential elements. Okay, so off the bat, he does not understand me.
Yeah.
The reason people don't join other Christian churches is because they realize that the same psychological mechanism that gave them testimonies of Mormonism is used across the board, and so no church is reliable because it all relies on the same nonsense.
I think he kind of gets that, and I think he'll come into that a little bit later. But first of all, that's just a really stupid thing to say because people do actually leave the church and join Christian churches. And he's like, it's kind of the where would you go thing. Where will you go to learn about prophets? And it's literally anywhere else. Where will you go to have priesthood authority? It's
Nobody
that doesn't matter.
About that. That's not a thing.
Just because you say it's a thing doesn't mean it.
Right, exactly. And he goes on to say, what happened to prophets, revelation, temples, priesthood authority, the plan of salvation, the doctrine of eternal man, etc.? See, he's already operating from he's obviously operating under the assumption that the church is true because he's what about all these things? Not recognizing that it's if it's not true, those things are bogus. He just can't even comprehend. He just can't get outside of his worldview enough to realize priesthood authority is not a thing.
It's imagine being part of a pyramid scheme selling a fake product and they're where
will you get your doTERRA lavender from if you leave us? You're going to go to Young Living? You think that they have what we have? I didn't like how my voice sounded when I yelled that.
It's okay.
And how could the God of the Bible, that guy, suddenly decide that everyone should be free to interpret scripture as they wish, creating a church for every opinion?
How could the God who condones slavery and rape and genocide, how could he dare let anyone interpret scripture as they wish? It's called General Conference. They interpret scripture differently every single talk.
I've heard general authorities misquote scriptures. This was weird for me even when I was Mormon. Apostles would use What's that scripture that's like, you read the scriptures because in them you think you'll find eternal life, and the whole point of the scripture is to say that, like, you guys are Pharisees, but, like, they use it in general conference as a, like, read your scriptures.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like, okay. Perhaps even more important, however, is that basically every reason to doubt Mormonism is a good enough reason to doubt Christianity. Nailed it.
Fair.
Not enough archaeological evidence of the Book of Mormon. Feel like some of, well, okay.
Not enough. It's just that there's not any.
Feel like some of the archaeological evidence might contradict the Book of Mormon.
All
the
of
same
it.
is true of the Bible. To be fair, though, that's not strictly true, because, like, some stuff in the Bible, like, sort
Actually
of happened.
happened.
Yeah. Whereas the Book of Mormon is like, there is zero evidence. There is nothing. It
There
is not
actually
true.
is a Jerusalem, and you
Right.
can actually go there.
Right. I've been there. I've been on the Holy Tour of Israel. Don't like polygamy, or that two of Joseph's plural wives were 20 years his junior? You'll see the same trend for the prophets of old.
Oh, well, in that case, if
That's
old
fine,
dicks
then.
have done it, then it's fine for the new dicks to do it.
Joseph Smith offends Western sensibility, not nearly as badly as prophets such as Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Joshua. Yet we can kind of, like, give them a break, though, do you know what I mean? A quick gander at the Old Testament shows that Joseph Smith has a relatively immaculate record, based on Western standards.
You know, he only killed
The bar
3
is
people.
so low, isn't it?
This
It's
is
like,
like-
if you just marry 2 teenagers, you've got an immaculate
By Western
record.
culture, you're doing great.
Yeah, I mean, because the people in the Bible had 1,000 concubines, so... And so we find that arguments against Joseph Smith are really arguments against all the prophets. But see, again, this is still operating under the assumption that
And also making good points. Like,
Yes, some solid
they
points.
were all bad people.
the messengers from whom we learn of Christ and of whom Christ testified, which is why everyone I know who has left the church has become some version of an atheist. And it is why a large poll of ex-Mormons found that fewer than 1 in 10 ex-Mormons convert to another Christian religion. Good job, guys! You're nailing
We're
it.
doing it. 90%. That's A.
You see, at first they decide that Joseph Smith couldn't have possibly been called by Christ. Then they find that they can no longer believe that Christ is really the Son of God. Do you want to take over? I feel like I've been reading for
Sure.
ages.
Yeah, there weren't as many like title breaks as I thought
Yeah.
there would be. We just get used to Trimble, you know.
We get used to. I mean, Greg is like the familiar happy
Yeah.
place for me
We
right
miss-
now.
Greg
Take
is-
me back.
Greg is more of a friend.
We love you, Greg.
So for LDS members, particularly RMs and lifelong members,
Rude.
Christianity itself hinges. Yeah, you're not either one of these. Sorry, Sam. It's like particularly RMs, lifelong members,
Everyone
and
else
then
is trash.
Christianity itself hangs upon the question: was Joseph Smith really a prophet? When Joseph Smith's role as a prophet is called into question, so is Christ's role as the Redeemer. Is it though?
I get it. I get what he's saying.
Sure, and yeah, it kind of, I mean, it all crumbled at the same time, more or
Yeah.
less, for me, and so it's valid, but at the same time, there are lots of people who claim to be prophets who don't even know the name Joseph Smith, so
Yeah.
it's like, it's just, it's arrogant to make that link. You're not as big of a cult as you wish you were. Anti-Mormonism isn't just about getting people to lose faith in our church, it's about getting people to lose faith in God and Christ and revelation and religion.
Yay!
Once you've tasted the sweetest and most perfect form of Christianity,
Polygamy.
Wow. Where else will you go
That
when
is
you
arrogant,
leave?
isn't it?
That is
That's
so-
sweet. I mean, way to shit on everyone else in the world.
Yeah.
0.02% Mormons.
Yeah, Mr. Lifelong Member who hasn't actually tasted anything else. Ah. If you really understand the teachings of the restored gospel, deciding that Mormonism is false means accepting some form of atheism, including agnosticism, humanism, and non-religious spiritualism. Oh, note, when I refer to atheism in the rest of this article, I also refer to its cousins, agnosticism, naturalism, humanism, etc. To understand why I include these groups under the banner of atheism, click here. Maybe that'll be a
How
future-
dare they try and get me to like their Facebook page in the middle of this point?
So okay, can I get into what I've been thinking about and researching a lot lately?
Yes.
So, I've had some really interesting experiences lately thinking about the religious experience, because I really liked my experience in Mormonism. Some of the experiences that I had were really beneficial to me as a person. They instilled in me a lot of confidence and hope and love and, the things I needed to live a fulfilled life. And when I lost religion, it was kind of like, well, what happened to those things? I don't believe in God anymore. And so I figured, well, these things are happening, those things happened in my brain. So if they happen once in my brain, they can probably happen again in my brain. So I've been looking for ways to facilitate those same sort of experiences without buying into the dogma and the authoritarian pressure that comes with religion.
And that's why we're now doing tarot cards.
I learned that they're called tarot cards.
Of course they are.
And I did tarot cards. Anyway, I did it. But it's fun to participate in these religious things because you have the joy of like the religious experience and also the joy of debunking it at the same time, which is a beautiful dichotomy. I really like it. But anyway, so I've been exploring all these religious symbols, and I actually have come to the conclusion that I believe that religion was intended to get us out of religion. If you haven't watched Westworld, you need to stop watching this and watch Westworld now.
I don't want you to get too far into that, because you say intended, and like I already just don't like that word, because it's not intended.
Okay,
but it is a mechanism that, you know, I know what you're saying, but I don't know that these people will.
So I kind of anthropomorphize the universe a little bit, and I hate when people do that because I hate the like new agey hippie people who are like, the universe wants this.
You there.
It wants you, and it's like, well,
the universe doesn't give a shit
that's not
about
true.
you.
It's just what's happening is kind of inevitable. We're all the product of our circumstance, so the universe just kind of does spit you out as this thing. And, you know, when you take into account all of your organic programming, it lends itself to desiring certain things. And so when
watch Westworld.
So watch Westworld. So anyway, I believe that religion was a way of early mankind's way of abstractifying his conception of self and his desire for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he played off that, and religion kind of improved over time, because like back in the Old Testament days, we had just like total dicks as prophets, as this guy pointed out, just the worst humans. But they got better, and maybe Joseph Smith is better compared to those people. But there's something.
Record.
But Joseph Smith obviously wasn't perfect because he was molesting kids, teenagers, teens.
We'll give him that.
Sure.
We need to move on this.
So what I'm saying is that it improves to the point where mankind comes face to face with himself, not with God. The point of religion is not to find God, but to find the divinity in secular atheist humanist terms within yourself, your highest ideals. And so I think he actually is identifying a real phenomenon, which is the point of religion is to get out of religion.
Yeah, but you can put it a lot more simply by saying the reason people don't join other Christian churches is just because they have, by that point, usually understood their own psychology enough to not be able to like fall back into that kind of dogma, and you know. Okay, let's move on.
Sure.
2. Crises of faith in LDS communities are really just a symptom of a larger problem. There are many critics who love highlighting the Latter-day Saints who choose to leave the church. They say that the rest of us are in denial, that we belong to some kind of crazy and fraudulent cult, we do say that, and have our heads too deep in the sand to see how many people are drawing that very conclusion.
That was exactly what I was thinking about reading this.
Yeah, this really is hitting the nail on the head. This is his great work. They want us to look at our friends and family members who are leaving the church and feel alerted to the idea there is something wrong with the Mormon church.
Bingo.
But if you look at the extensive survey data Pew has collected on religion in the US, what you see is that, like never before, people, especially millennials, are abandoning the religion they grew up in.
I love my generation.
Millennials are the best. While Mormons are much more likely than other Christians to become atheists when they leave their childhood faith, the number of Christians who are becoming unaffiliated with religion is growing dramatically. The most concerning trend is among millennials. Across the board, in LDS and other Christian churches, approximately 1 in 3 millennials are leaving the faith they were raised in for something else. For Mormon millennials, that something else is generally a form of atheism, and for other millennials it is largely a mix of atheism and non-denominationalism, what you might call a gateway to atheism.
Some dude offered me some non-denominationalism. I just butchered this joke. I was going to pretend like he was a drug peddler and it was a gateway drug. He's like, hey dude, you want to try some non-denominationism for a little bit?
It's not DMT.
Now we're just full-blown atheist addicts.
So to be clear, it's not that we have discovered new information about Joseph Smith. It is that. It's that has suddenly changed a lot of people's minds about the Restoration. The criticisms you hear today are the same criticisms that have been peddled for decades and longer. And the things that people have been criticising about the Mormon Church for decades and longer are now admitted in church essays. Oh no, our battery's gonna die.
Oh
shit.
No. What do we do?
Get a new battery, but I don't know where the other battery is. Shit.
You gotta find the other battery. We drew on the spirit of our pioneer forebears and pushed through this adversity and are bringing you the rest of this segment. No, crises of faith aren't a Mormon problem. They're a humankind problem, a civilizational problem. faith itself is weakening in Western society. Totally agree. And it's a good thing. Perhaps we have learned so much through science that we feel silly relying on beliefs that we can't confirm scientifically.
We do feel silly, but Dustin doesn't.
Perhaps with all the temptations that it's bound, it's just easier not having to worry about a God who will hold us accountable for our choices. Perhaps it is something else.
Speculate wildly.
Yeah, because as he's pointed out, you don't have to rely on evidence to make any sort of assumption.
Yeah.
It could be whatever you want it to be, just like God.
Science is whatever we want it to be.
Maybe we're starting to witness what Christ was concerned about when he posed that question. Oh, I skipped one. But what I do know is that before he died, Christ told a parable about relying on God versus relying on man. You don't know that because you don't even know who wrote the New Testament. Luke writes that the purpose of this parable is to remind us to pray always and not faint. And after telling the parable, Christ asked, perhaps with sadness in his voice. I love when people insert how they think Jesus might have acted.
And then earlier he talked about making the scriptures fit what we want.
Yeah.
Amazing.
When the Son of Man cometh, will he find faith on the earth? Maybe we're starting to witness what Christ was concerned about when he posed that question. So why might the adversary lay the foundation for plunging Western society into atheism? The reason goes deeper than you may have ever expected. Now that we understand the central role of atheism is playing in the crisis of faith for most Mormons and other Christians, it's time to understand the profound implications. This is just silly at this point. You're like...
This really is silly.
Yeah. I love just the boogeyman...
No awareness.
The boogeyman attitude of atheists. And I guess I had it too as a member of the church because you just can't imagine life without it.
Like, his argument for not becoming an atheist is like, everyone's becoming atheist, because like, that word to him is just inherently negative.
Right.
So he can't even grasp that it's about logic and evidence and reason and trying to make the world better through things that actually work, not through fallacy. Should I start reading 3?
Yep.
When are we getting to his big 4?
I can't wait for the aha moment. We'll know.
Postmodern atheism is paving the way for a new and destructive moral order. We got to put that on Reddit. On the atheism subreddit. To be clear, people who become atheists don't suddenly become moral monsters. Aw, that was so sweet of him to say that. Their moral views shift, but they probably have more in common with the moral beliefs of their religious friends than they have in contrast. However...
So what's the big deal?
We're about to find out. One of the problems with the rise of atheism is that it comes with delayed consequences. Like the frog in the pot of water. Someone told me recently that thing's bogus, by the way. Frogs don't boil themselves to death in hot water. They will jump out.
Sam, will you stop using evidence to
like
tear
the
apart some
frog
good stories?
in the pot of water who doesn't jump out because the heat only gradually rises. Most atheists are unaware of where their belief system will lead society. I feel like I'm very aware and excited about it. The reason for this is simply that most atheists have had a religious upbringing, and live in an environment that has been deeply influenced by Christianity. It is one thing to reject revealed religion, and another to abandon mindsets, attitudes, and values which you don't even realise have been socialised into you since birth. Hey, so he recognises that.
Yeah.
Thus, many atheists don't realise that when they've rejected God, everything about the way they see the world is deeply influenced by religion. Well, funny, Justin, because Tanner just wrote an amazing 10 out of 10 article on that very thing, and he seems to realise it. For now, many atheists can look around and say, we are freed from the foolish traditions of our fathers, and feel content that nothing drastic has changed in the process. Nothing drastic. But in the long run, much will change in a society driven by atheism. Fortunately, following the logic of atheism to its natural conclusions is far from an impossible task. What? For 150 years, pioneering atheist thinkers and philosophers have been describing the moral order that naturally emerges from postmodern atheism. Among postmodern thinkers, both atheists and theists, there isn't a lot of disagreement about the general direction that atheism will take us. So, this is what we know. For thousands of years, morality has been based on beliefs about human purpose, the immortality of the soul, and other transcendent truths. All beliefs that are religious in nature, as they cannot be scientifically evaluated. However, postmodern atheism rejects all of these notions in the long term for the same reason that it rejects religion. They cannot be studied or confirmed by scientific inquiry. Instead, atheism replaces the foundations of morality with what can be seen, heard, touched, or otherwise measured. Since this eliminates notions of God and the interplay between good and evil, we can stop looking outward to ask, what do God's laws or the universe's laws require of us? And instead we can begin looking inward and ask more fully than ever before, wait, What do I want?
Okay, just a quick break. The problem with theists and religionists generally is that they see everything as kind of happening in a vacuum. I was surprised to see that he mentioned social conditioning.
Yeah.
Because the very basic idea of social conditioning completely negates the idea of a premortality, because that's how Mormons justify badness in the world and people being born into worse circumstances or poor intellect. They say, oh, they were just less valiant in the premortal realm.
Well, that is a dying kind of theory.
It is. I'm going to write a thing tearing it apart. But because nothing happens in a vacuum. And so even this idea of morality saying, oh, like prophets, God prescribed these moral things. That's not how it happened.
Right.
Those like moral and societal prescriptions evolved naturally.
And if
with the religion.
If we would have listened to prophets, we'd still, like the Mormon Church is prophets opposed the Equal Rights Amendment and the Civil Rights Movement. So it's like we would still be worse morality-wise if we would have listened to these prophets.
So that's the thing, is like humanity evolves and religion has been part of that evolution. And so I think Christianity was an improvement from Judaism. But he's like one of the Jews who's like, no, Jesus sucks, like, the prophets have always done it this way, why are you trying to change and make it better? It's like, because that's human evolution, we are always getting better, and he's just scared of it. And so what he's saying is, we need to stick to these vague ideas about the universe to prescribe morality to us, otherwise it'll be a free-for-all. But it already is a free-for-all, because there are thousands of religions on earth, all claiming different things and prescribing different morality. So what we're doing is we're saying, instead of just like this free-for-all shit show where you can just gather facts from wherever you want from your own brain, we can say this is what the evidence says, and let's prescribe morality from what actually works.
This is what drives people to want to murder people. Like that's a way more effective way to stop murderers than just like throwing religion down their throats and hoping that they'll feel accountable to a deity enough to not murder someone.
So it's like, there are going to be differences of opinion. There already are so many differences of opinion.
You are 0.02% of the world's population,
But we're just bringing evidence
Mormons.
into it.
Rather than morality being driven by belief in standards of right and wrong, good and evil, and other such dualisms, I hate this. Morality will eventually be driven solely by human desires, cravings, and impulses, as these are actually palpable. That's already offensive and just totally wrong, because our morality is in terms of, our ideas about morality are just, does it hurt or help people? And that's very, if you can quantify that, then that's great, because you can have more progress. But this is like, he lists like these, he says right and wrong, good and evil, and other such dualisms, recognizing that religion is like a dualism, but he doesn't seem to realize that's a total just world fallacy, because he then, and then he also gives a friggin' straw man, because he says that morality will be driven by human desires, cravings, and impulses, like just implying that, sorry, I just spat, that all atheists are just raging hedonists. It's just insane. Simply put, society will be governed completely by what individuals think they want and need. That's what religion, that's the Republican Party! As opposed to a sense of duty and obligation to some higher truth about good and evil. This is not... He doesn't get it. Oh, it's so long, Tanner.
What he's saying is, I don't have the mental capacity to imagine anything else, and so I'm just going to just slop around in the mud.
Yeah, and slam the other thing for something it isn't. To understand what all of this means, you don't understand what all this means, we must identify the principal need that drives human sociality. The answer, according to great thinkers of the ages, is this: respect. More than anything else, people crave respect. He's right, but it's more about cooperation and tribalism. Like, respect is a fine way of saying it, but it is a little bit more complicated than that. They may want sex, but sex from someone who thinks nothing of you is unsatisfying. Is it, Tam?
I wouldn't know.
They may desire love, but to be loved by someone who doesn't see you as an equal is demeaning. They may crave empathy, but without respect, there is no real empathy. Where is he going with this? The reason that status, wealth, and power all matter so much to so many people is because they gain you the respect of others. Okay, seriously, where is he going with this?
I hope this isn't the aha moment.
Why did Cain commit the first murder? Because Cain couldn't stand that God had respect unto Abel and his offering. But unto Cain and his offering, God had not respect. The powerful desire for respect is held in check by a belief in God that is unleashed once the last vestiges of religious influences are eliminated from society. That is so ridiculously false.
I mean, sure, I don't have respect for your argument, but I have respect for a lot of things and people. In fact, I think most of the enlightened thinkers have a sense of universalism, which is just like a respect for everyone regardless of tribe and upbringing and belief. I would argue that atheists generally have more respect for people and things than religious people do.
Oh gosh, here we go. To understand what I mean by this, consider the recent campaign to legalize same-sex marriage. Proponents of same-sex marriage loudly proclaimed that love wins, but this was never about love. You dick!
You asshole.
Same-sex couples already had the right to love whomever they wanted. They could have been content with anti-discrimination laws or civil unions, but it wasn't enough! It reminds me of the Bo Burnham song. It's like, they're being greedy and they know it. What they really wanted was for their union to be just as respected as anyone else.
They could have loved, but and we could have just let them love, but they got greedy. They wanted to be treated like normal human beings, and that's where I draw the line.
Marriage was an honor afforded only to heterosexual couples, and same-sex couples were going to feel slighted until that changed.
Where's your respect now, dick?
Voting was reserved primarily for men, the ones with the more logical brains, the stronger bodies, and then women. They could have just been content with, having men to guide them and still being able to be a part of a democracy because of their husband. But no, they wanted the right to vote too.
So selfish, no respect.
Black people, they weren't content with just showing up to sacrament and having the restored gospel of Jesus Christ to save them. They wanted to be able to get to the highest level of the celestial kingdom and have their marriage unified in the temple.
Ugh. So greedy.
The consequence is that society begins to gravitate around radical equality. Imagine! This is like the moral destitution he fears.
He just fears that we'll all be equal in the sight of God.
That is, people will fight and fight until society cannot and will not recognise that any choice is better than another. That any lifestyle, belief or action has more moral merit than another.
It'll be evidence-based.
Postmodern also, we haven't even brought up the fact that they've shown now that atheists are more altruistic and less likely to steal than theists. We're nearly at the end of 3. And then we've got 4. Postmodern atheist philosophers, following the logic of atheism, say that all differences, such as gender and family hierarchy, must be eliminated in the process. I'm not sure that we say that. They claim that once the forces of radical equality are unleashed upon the old system of traditional morality and institutions, our world will be transformed into something that even they cannot fully conceive. What is clear is that every time society allows one choice, one lifestyle, one belief to be honoured above another... What article am I reading?
Someone must feel dishonoured?
Someone must feel dishonoured, and nothing creates more anger and unrest than to be dishonoured. To be respected. I honestly don't give a shit if this person dishonours me.
Doesn't this seem like a contradiction of what he was saying earlier?
I honestly feel like he's just spinning madly out at this point. And so, an atheist society will continue to struggle and struggle under the banner of equality until the world cannot tell a moral difference between two choices. These are just words. What are you saying? Anything you want to add?
No.
It's sad to see him try and grapple with philosophy
It's like him
poorly.
It's like him saying... The idea that everyone should be treated equal is just going to make everyone so pissed that that we don't get there. Like the idea of treating all people with respect will make us very disrespectful.
He really didn't do a good point. Like, there are so many better ways he could have taken that tribalism angle, but that was like honestly nonsense.
Too stupid
like,
to read this.
I just think we're not too stupid, but it doesn't make logical sense, and I'm sure that if we read it a bit more, we could sort of figure out exactly where he's coming from, but I'm just like not interested in figuring out his ludicrous perspective.
That's the problem. Is it so based in imagination
that
you'd have to like sort through and like figure out which hypothetical non-reality he's living in.
And here's the difference between us and this writer is that we can look at something and say, okay, what's the evidence? Let's determine the conclusion. Whereas he has already decided the conclusion and then written this drivel to try and back it up. Mm. Let's get on to 4.
And there's the problem with faith in a nutshell. Do you remember when Lehi says, number 4, the Book of Mormon powerfully responds to this mindset. Do you remember when Lehi says, there must needs be an opposition in all things? Latter-day Saints often associate that sermon with the purpose of trials and hardship, but there is far more to it than that. In a recent conference talk, Elder Oaks affirmed that Lehi wasn't just talking about opposition in the sense of difficulty, but more particularly about opposition in the sense of differences or opposites. And I really like that point. I think that is physics. Every action is an equal and opposite reaction.
You don't need to hear that from a religious leader for it to be the case.
You don't. With that understanding, watch how Lehi's words respond to the goal of postmodern atheism. And
it's almost, sorry, it's just kind of insult. I get it, but like even saying that there's a goal, like there are plenty of atheists who are not remotely involved in trying to make anyone else atheist. That's just how they feel. They just have not had enough evidence to believe that there's a God. But like this is acting like it's this huge. It's trying to institutionalize atheism because he loves institutions, because he loves organized religion, and he can't fathom that all atheists aren't kind of like in one similar group. And it's like there's plenty of different atheists. There are atheists that are totally illogical and stupid, and then there are us.
Or just and to bring about God's eternal purposes in the end of man, it must needs be that there was an opposition, even the forbidden fruit in opposition to the tree of life. Wherefore the Lord gave unto man that he should act for himself, but man could not act for himself, save it should be that he was enticed by one or the other. Lehi explains that for agency to work, man must not only have freedom, but choices. The goal of atheism, however, is to destroy the moral distinction between choices.
No, it's not.
Coming from the man who said Joseph Smith wasn't that bad compared to the prophets who were committing genocide and rape.
Just because he married 2 women 20 years his senior. Just because he married 2 14-year-olds.
So pardon me for... destroy the moral distinction between choices. Or in other words, the goal of atheism is to destroy the agency of man.
Holy
at least
crap,
to the extent possible.
This is deluded.
Ultimately, this is what anti-Mormonism intends to accomplish. So again, I think he's smarter maybe than the average Mormon.
Yeah.
And that he can see some real phenomena happening. For instance, I don't believe in free will. Mm-hmm. I think that we're all basically organic computers that have, drawn on years and years of both DNA and circumstantial conditioning that have instilled in us our morality and our values and our sense of self, which is really just an illusion. But that being
Not
said...
that we think it's necessarily like a Sims game where it's like
right.
everything you do. I mean, I do think there are points in our day where we make choices, but
right.
obviously...
Because the power of making a choice has been instilled within us. And so I think that the idea of agency is beneficial, that I think that's something we can instill in each other is like, hey, we have the power to choose and we can make the world better that way.
It's mind-boggling to me that he has just fallen so hard for just the fallacies they feed you about anti-Mormonism and atheism that he is making this about agent. Like, how can you say atheists have less agency? Like, how do we have less agency than when we were bound to give 10% of our money, wear certain underwear, not drink or eat certain things? Like, I know that they've been fed that line of like, rules are freedom, just like 1984 says. They don't get it.
Yeah. So actually, I think this guy has a lot of potential to end up being one of us. Because I used to write dribble like this all the time. Because it shows that he's thinking about things and like seeing things happen.
Which is dangerous.
But hasn't yet connected all the dots.
Like how he knew that we are socialized into religion. That was honestly really, I was impressed that he even grasped that.
Ultimately, this is what anti-Mormonism intends to accomplish. For it must needs be that there is an opposition in all things. If not so, righteousness could not be brought to pass, neither wickedness, neither holiness, nor misery, neither good nor bad. Wherefore all things must needs be compound in one. Wherefore, if it should be one body, it must needs remain as dead, having neither happiness nor misery, neither sense nor insensibility. Wherefore, this thing must needs destroy the wisdom of God and his eternal purposes.
So his aha moment in number 4 is that atheism destroys agency.
That wasn't that great of an aha.
That was a really terrible aha. This has really spun into decline. Let's get on to 5 because my phone's going to get full.
Okay.
5. Please tell me there's no more after this?
No,
okay.
5's the last one.
Phew! 5. An important and final conclusion, as opposed to a non-final conclusion. If you have struggled with doubt, or you know someone who has, ellipsis, so too have apostles and prophets before they became such. Doubt is not faced by the weak alone. I have personally experienced overwhelming doubt. See you soon, Dustin. Come on our podcast. In my darkest moments when I felt like I was losing touch with reality. No, he didn't feel like that writing this post though. This is him being grounded. No longer knowing what was real and what was true. The only thing that enabled me to hold a little longer was what I just finished sharing in this article. That's so sad. In my moments of desperation, this is what I imagine. A little bit of prose here. I see myself looking out into a dark and stormy world where 2 paths lie before me. I feel confused as to which I should take. I have no way of really knowing which path I would want to take, for I cannot be sure where either leads. I'm actually impressed that he's had this much doubt. Yeah. As confusion settles in, I look to see where the path on the left seems to lead. As I look out into the distance, there appears to be a dark and horrific abyss, and it seems as if this path will lead me there. It's so sad because he's just been taught that path is the dark abyss. Like, that's your only... I wish he was like a convert or something, because like for me, the faith journey was so much different, because I knew that if I left, it wasn't going to be a dark abyss, because, you know, I'd already lived in the real world, but this guy just, he has no concept of that. Anyway, but as I turn to the right, I look to see where the other path leads. There appears to be nothing in the distance, but suddenly I see what looks like a flicker of light. It seems as though it might just be a small flame from a single candlestick. It's... I just love like religious imagery in the 21st century hasn't like moved on. It like still has to be a candlestick. So like it appears to be someone's flashlight app. It's hard to know if it's just my imagination, but something tells me that it is real, and this fills me with hope. It's hard to imagine if it's just my imagination, but something tells me that it's real.
Your imagination?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Ultimately, I must decide to take one path or the other. Either way, the decision is really a question of faith. Which path do I believe will lead me to where I want to go? Which path will bring the happiness I seek? I am left to choose between the path that seems to lead to an immense abyss or the path that seems to lead to that flicker of light. This is so sad. I'm actually getting emotional for him.
I feel sad.
And as I have chosen to move closer to that flickering light, despite the confusion and doubt that sometimes assails, I invariably catch a better glimpse of the light, and I see that it is no candlelight but a blazing star of gigantic proportions. Through the haze and darkness, it was just sometimes hard to see. I add my testimony to millions of others that Christ lives. I have had too many experiences with both the flickering light and the blazing star to believe otherwise. I believe humankind has a purpose. I believe that there is a right and a wrong, and I believe that there is a God and an eternal law, and because of these things, I am a Latter-day Saint. For the alternative is the atheism that would guide our civilization into the abyss if we ever gave it the chance. Sweden really isn't in an abyss right now.
No,
I just want to make that point.
they're topping all the lists of
they
good
are
things.
really nailing everything.
I just want to say, Dustin,
if you're listening to this,
we called you an asshole and a dick, and you are. But it's not your
but
fault.
we were too.
We were too.
So don't take it too personally.
Yeah, because once you, figure it out and end up where we are, we'll welcome you with open arms, because we've all been through that same thing. Because, like you said, we're socially conditioned to have the values and the beliefs that we do. And so, of course, when you think about what you want, it's to be the best Latter-day Saint you can be, because that's been programmed in you. But there's something else that gets programmed in you with Mormonism, and that's a desire for truth above all things, and that's what leads you out of Mormonism. But because when you value truth more than anything else, it sets you free. So even though it seems like an abyss because you've been taught that it's an abyss, once you go through that, and it is hard, it really, really sucks in a lot of really big ways, and I don't know your situation, maybe you're married with kids, maybe all your family's TBM and they're relying on you and your testimony, and maybe your wife will leave you, and maybe your kids will hate you, because that really does happen to real people, but there is no price on truth. And when you find that, you find the God that you've always been looking for. Because I felt that as an atheist. I've had these experiences where I said, I've followed that light of truth my whole life, and I had experiences with it that were like a candle or an iPhone app. And as an atheist, I found the fullness of that. And it's truly joyful and wonderful and evidence-based. You don't have to... Faith is unnecessary. You don't need it.
It's morality and it's understanding that can continue to increase. I think you probably do know that you do feel like you're stagnating in Mormonism sometimes. Sorry about that, everyone. Sorry it's been such a videographic piece of crap.
It's been a long vacation, and we're just getting back into the swing of things, and so we need to find all our equipment. But atheism is the future. Don't be like...
And it's fun.
And it's fun. It really is. And it's not...
And it's moral.
It's
and
not
we
all the
help
bad things
more
they say it
people
is.
now than we used to. Dustin, follow us on Twitter. Everyone who's watching, thanks for being here. We're going to leave a donate link below where you can help support us.
And thanks to everyone who has so far. We really
thank
appreciate it.
you so much to everyone who supports us. You guys are honestly the best.